Welcome to the Organisational Inclusionist. I'm your host, Grace Mosuro. In this podcast series, we'll be delving deep into the pressing issues surrounding equality, diversity, and inclusion in both the workplace and the broader world. My goal is to foster understanding, inspire change, and amplify the voices of those advocating for a more inclusive and equitable society. Throughout this series, I'll be engaging in candid discussions with leaders, experts, activists, and changemakers from various fields. We'll explore the challenges, successes, and evolving landscapes of equality, diversity, and inclusion. From dismantling systematic biases to promoting equal opportunities for all, we'll touch on a broad range of topics. But we won't stop at discussing problems. We'll actively seek out solutions and actionable steps to drive positive change. Our aim is to inspire and empower you, our listeners, to take an active role in making the world a better place for everyone. This is the Organisational Inclusionist. Let's get started. So, welcome everyone to this episode of the Organisational Inclusionist. Today I am joined by the indemnable Sope Agbelusi. Okay, Sope is a Niger brother. I'm Nigerian, for those of you that don't know. And I am really excited to have him on today. Sope is someone that I met 3 months ago, I think it was.
Yeah, January.
Yeah, and it's crazy. 3 months already. It's January, it's March now. And we met at a Publicity with Purpose coaching session, and I was immediately drawn to just you and your quiet confidence, your humility, but your journey as well. I feel like your story is one that is extremely inspiring for me as a Nigerian, not born in the UK, and someone that is new to entrepreneurship and managing my own consultancy. I've listened to a few episodes of your podcast. I will get you to introduce yourself and your podcast in a second, but for me, getting you on the podcast was so important because I spy and fangirl on your podcast. Anyone that's noticed or followed my podcast from the beginning will see that they've changed, and I want to just shout out Sope for the reason they've changed, because I'm like, oh, this is good. Let me try this. So yeah, Sope, I just feel like you're doing amazing things. I'm so blown away by your story and how you've gone from making 11K a year to doing what you're doing now. That is huge to me. Or from £23 an hour, I think you said you were making, to what you're making now. Like, the journey has been amazing. And I'm so excited that I get to have you on to bring your journey to my listeners and to really show what representation looks like in entrepreneurship, but also encourage others who are thinking about it or are struggling with it, and really give them the courage to continue on that journey. So thank you so much for joining me.
Absolute pleasure.
And I want to give you a few minutes just to introduce yourself to any of our listeners that don't know who Sope is. And yeah, over to you.
Oh, one, it feels a bit weird being on the other side of the mic.
I bet.
I am, who am I? I'm a husband. So I've been married for 18 years this year. I've been with my wife for about 20 years. So she is probably, she's been with me more times longer than I've been alive, for half my life, basically.
Yeah.
So my wife is very important to me. I have two teenage kids, so 17-year-old son, 16-year-old daughter. Again, I was premised with those two elements because those two elements, and then I'll say my faith first, and then those two elements are the foundation that have enabled me to do everything that I've done and have equipped me to learn so much to do what I do right now. And currently, I run a exec coaching and leadership development company called MindsetShift. And predominantly what we do is three things. We unlearn, unlock, and unleash. And what I mean by that is we work with leaders, a lot of senior leaders in organizations, in corporates, in local governments, at university, consultancies, a lot, as well as with their teams and with their culture to unlearn a lot of different things. And so many times in life, we just try to cram everything all in. And it's very much like, I'd use the phone analogy. It's like when your phone is full, you need to delete some stuff to get some new stuff to add new apps to it or add new pictures to it. So a lot of times it's, well, how do we look into identity. How do we communicate better? How do we lead better? How do we actually really start to tap into bias that exists in all these corporate spaces? How do we deal with systematic racism? Well, there's a lot of learning that needs to be done, a lot of deleting that needs to be done. And a lot of times it's
Absolutely.
uncomfortable, it's hard, it's tough, you have to sit in it. But that's what we do. We walk alongside you and we sit in that to help you to unlearn. And then when you do that, you create that space. What that does is actually it frees up new stuff to bubble up to the surface. Because there's a lot of stuff that we already have inside of us that we know we just don't necessarily tap into, or we don't activate in our brain, because our brain can only hold, or it holds a lot, but our front lobe can only hold so much, and that's what it taps into on a regular basis. So we bring all that to the surface. That's the unlocking part. And then once
Mm.
we've unlocked it, it's like, okay, now I need to activate it. You need to unleash that onto the world. That's the action part. So it is those three different steps are what we do with our clients, and we've done for the last 5 years through Mindset Shift.
Amazing. Amazing. And tell us about your podcast.
And I have the Everyday Leadership podcast, which I've done for it's coming up to 4 years. Wow, yeah, it's been a minute. Um, and I started that because I love having conversations. I love learning from people. And I think a lot of times there are a lot of voices of people who are doing amazing things that we don't get to hear from. We don't get to
Mm.
hear their real journey. And we'll see all these different stars winning awards. I'm like, yeah, but that's not really relatable. But I can relate
Yeah.
to Grace and her journey and tap into that. And by the way, she's part of my podcast as well. So I can relate to her journey and that can encourage me. And the format is very much there are no questions. I don't give my guests any questions. A lot of times they don't know who I am. So it's a trust exercise. But they
Mm.
come on and we unpack that connection from when they are childhood all the way to where they are right now, just connecting those dots and pulling out those different streams of inspiration, of resilience, of grit, of failure, of just life, and how
Mm.
they lead themselves both personally and professional in all walks of their life. And that's what we do in Everyday Leadership Podcast.
Love it. Absolutely love it. For anyone that's not listened or followed Everyday Leadership, you really need to. He's got some amazing guests on there. And it's just always a vibe. There's so much you can learn as well. So go and check him out. You mentioned your faith. So I too am faith led. So I'm a Christian and I'm legit obsessed with God, right? But I know that it can sometimes be challenging navigating kind of faith and the world. Like, how do you draw on your faith in the work that you do?
Um, well, if not for my faith, I would not have the audacity to show up and do the work I do right now and be
I
able to
love that.
influence so many different people. So from the start, it's what's actually driving me. It's what's pulling me into the purpose. And I utilize it without necessarily putting it in people's faces.
Mm.
There are times when it might be, for example, before I go on a call or I have a coaching session or facilitate a session, I'll pray.
Yeah.
And that's just me just saying, like, God, just ground me, help me to just to focus and concentrate and really listen and tap into where this person is at so I can meet them and
Mm.
ask them the right questions to help them to navigate the different challenges. That's my faith going into those sessions, and people come
Yeah.
out feeling changed and transformed. That's me, God. Sometimes it's actually people bring it up and they'll make references to their faith, or they might see the picture behind me, which is of a young black boy with his hands closed. Like, oh, that's a nice picture. What's that about? I was like, I'm a man of faith. It's something that's important to me. So am I. Leads into a conversation. And it's very interesting when I've seen people do that. There is there's like I say, like, there's a sigh that they have where, to your point, people feel like you can't necessarily talk about faith or just pull it out like that.
Mm.
But when you be like, oh, that's something I'm interested in too, people just like, I can
Yeah.
really bring all of me into this conversation. There's an element of me that I don't necessarily have to hide. And that's
Mm.
been mad, even to the point where there are people who are Muslims, who are atheists. They're not believing that, but still it has sparked something around that. And I think for me as well, it's also a way for me just to showcase who I am. What I
Mm.
mean by that is I say that this is who I am, what I stand for, what I believe in. And a lot of times when it comes to Christianity, people say that, "Ah, I don't really like Christians because it's the model that people see."
Yeah.
It's all good reading the Bible. It's all good being able to quote scripture. But if you're the example that people see and you're not living your life right, then that's the example people know, and therefore they don't want no part of that. If I can
Exactly.
model something different to other people, I'd be like, oh, Ian is a man of faith.
Mm.
So like, oh wow, that's something different. It sparks a curiosity. So that's me in a way actually spreading the word and doing what Jesus told us to do as a disciple, go out and sow seeds into the world, go out and spread the good message. That's me doing that just through my work, just showing up in my authenticness, in my faith, but without actually put it in your face like that.
No, I love that. And I think I completely agree. I don't remember because my memory is awful. I blame it on the brain fog, but I also was blaming it on mummy brain when I had my daughter way before anything else. But my memory is awful, so I can't recite scripture. There are a few things that I know off by heart because I just love them, but most of it I can't recite. But my biggest mantra is I want people to see a light that shines from me and to wonder where that light comes from. And that starts the conversation. It's like, where is that energy from? Like, where is that glow from? And it's always, my response is always, it's the grace of God. And that starts the convo. So I love just your energy. I love exactly what you said about that because I completely agree. So what I want to do, because I really want this episode to kind of show people how you can make it, and I know you've not even touched a precipice of where you want to get to, but for a lot of people you are a beacon of encouragement and a vision or a sight of how you can succeed and overcome some challenges. So I would love it if you wouldn't mind sharing your story. So you started in the corporate world. How did that journey begin for you, and how did it take you to where you are today?
So I started in the corporate world in 2006. 2006 is also when I got married. 2006 is when there was a big proper recession. All this funny recession we're going through right now, that's not proper recession. There were no jobs. There was no jobs. Lehman Brothers has just gone bankrupt. The whole world, that's when the whole mortgage crisis happened. It was an absolute mess. And the reason why that really affected me is because when I left university, I studied economics. I had a job lined up in Canary Wharf.
Mm.
So we finish uni, we get married, expecting a child, we go on our honeymoon. Just before we go on our honeymoon, I get an email saying it's been pulled. The grad scheme has been gone. There's nothing available because of the recession. So we go on our honeymoon, and I'm trying to partially relax, but the other side of me is stressing, thinking, I've got a wife, I've got a child on the way, I ain't got a job. How am I going to be able to afford it? So literally, I spent half of my time on our honeymoon in cafes. It's way back. You didn't have laptops like you like that.
Yes.
We have no laptops really like that. I was in cafes on the internet trying to connect and trying to find jobs out here. Absolutely nothing. When we came back, I finally managed to land a role at a Barclays call center, and I remember I was getting paid £11,693 a year.
Wow.
It's nothing. That's not even a grand a month, and you got house we were renting, council tax, bills, blah 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 blah. So it was dire. It was tough, and I just
Mm.
felt very, very low. I remember I used to say to my wife, like, it's not always gonna be like this. And she's like, I know. Like, I know it's not. But in my head, I was like, it really can't always be like this. Like, I would never ever forget the moment when I remember came home. I was probably married for about 6 months, 6, 7 months. My son had been born now. He's about 2 or 3 months at that time. Came home. My wife had a band-aid on her finger. I was like, oh, what happened? She's like, oh, I cut myself. I was like, oh, well, the knife? Like, what happened? She's like, no. We used to have this tin that we had from uni. They used to have pennies
Mm.
in there. And she cut her hand busting open that tin because she had to get the pennies out to buy Pampers for my
Oh,
son.
wow.
And honestly, went through that. I remember she went upstairs and I sat down in the living room and I felt like such a failure. I'm like, what kind of man am I My wife is cutting her hands, trying to get pennies out because we
Yeah.
can't afford to. It was honestly felt one of the lowest points in my life. At that point in time, I was like, okay, things need to get better. So I've been applying for roles. Nothing came through. Finally managed to get another role. That was when the PPP scandal was going on.
Mm.
Around loans and all those different bits and pieces. I managed to land a role, which felt absolutely great. Went there, got it. It was paying really, really well. I did that for about 3 weeks. And then one night we all came in and they told us, some of you go to the left, some of you go to the right. I was like, oh, what's going on here? You on the left, thank you very much. We don't need you anymore.
Oh, wow.
Just like that. It was a contract role, just like that. First time I've ever experienced that. And this was late at night as well. We used to get like night rates. And this was in Birmingham. So drive home normally should take me about 20 minutes. It took me an hour. I've
Yeah.
never driven that slow in my life because I was like, I'm driving home. My wife's asleep. I'm driving home. I ain't got a job. And for 2 weeks, I went through a mini depression. I was there, but I was not there. I didn't shower I think I showered tomorrow. I'm smelling. But I literally showered and that was it. I would just stay on the couch, depressed, in a low state. I didn't know what I was going to do. And this was one reason why I love my wife so much. She just gave me the space I needed. She wasn't all up in my face. She was like, well, she literally just gave me she's like, you're going through some stuff. She gave me the space I needed. And after about 2 weeks, God just came to me and was like, all right, you finished? Are you still finished? Are you finished feeling
Feeling
sorry for
sorry for
yourself?
yourself, yeah.
Can't speak properly. I was like, get up and do something about it. And I did. And I
Mm.
applied for roles and roles and roles, and I got a role in London. And that literally was the start. Did that for about a year. I lived in my parents' house in London because I'm originally from London. But at that point in time, I'm living in London. I wasn't really seeing my family because they're away in the Midlands. They can't afford to be traveling down every single time. So young wife, young son, I'm seeing them for probably 2-3 times a week. I was like, this is not what I want. This is not the life I want. Yes, it's a great start to my career, but I need to do something very, very differently. Started applying for roles, and I landed one back in the Midlands. And interesting about that role, when I first got it, went for it, went all the way through. I already started doing my CMA at a point in time to become a chartered accountant. And when I got that role, something I had prayed for, I remember being on the bus praying for this role and saying, Lord, I need a role that's going to pay for my CMA, that's going to give me time off, not my holidays, but they're going to pay for that holidays as well. It needs to be back home. And we were also contemplating around having a second child at that point in time. And I also felt God say, go ahead and have a child. I'll get you back home. I had nothing planned. I had nothing.
I love
And I
that.
spoke to my wife about it. She's like, all right, let's do this. Anaya daughter, we find out about her. The week after we found out about Anaya, I landed a job back in Midlands.
Look at God.
Just like that.
That
But then I
is
started there. And this is one thing I want to double click on. When I started, I want to go into them like, oh, by the way, I've been doing my CMA. Are you guys going to cover me and pay me back for what I've done? They were like, pay you back? We never done that. I was like, okay, just because you never done that doesn't mean that you can't do it. Go and speak to whoever you need to speak to. If the answer is no, but actually, I want you to inquire. And they were like, okay. And they had massive organization, Dragon Land Rover, never ever done that in life. I don't think I've ever done it again. They paid me about $3,500 that I already spent on the exams I was doing before I even joined them. And I had no right was the audacity to ask, landed me some money, which I needed. So it's those kind of elements that have always been with me all the way throughout my career. Ask, you don't receive. It's a biblical principle that I live my life by. So consistently willing to ask the questions that people are scared to do has helped me to move. Leaning into a lot of lessons I learned from being married young about knowing how to be able to communicate, read the room, know how to be able to diffuse conflict. All those different elements that was tough lessons that I was learning being young, being married, and figuring out with young kids. I just took into the workplace. That's how I met people. That's how I connected with people. That's how I changed the environment and dynamics and stuff I was in. It's also recognizing that people were actual people. I mean by that they weren't numbers. So I was able to see into people, and that helped me to build the right teams and the right I won't say actually mental. It was more right teams and right people around me. And that's been what helped me the way throughout my career. So I moved from JLR moved into another career. I did that for a number of years. It was good. But into that, I'm probably in 12 years into my career right now. And after struggling for about 4 or 5 years in different spaces and starting to get a little bit better, a little bit more comfortable, and landing this role in a company that my manager really liked me. Like I was in there within 6 months, I got a promotion. Within 6 months, they created a brand new role for me that removed her a bit because she's like, no, you're really good at what you do. I merged my roles. So I initially went as a finance person. I merged finance and sales together because I shadowed the guy doing sales for 6 months. I was like, yeah, I can do that. I merged that role together, a role that did not exist. I was the person who, after leading a team for a while, I'm like, the team is taking up a lot of my time, and there's work I need to do. I don't want to be doing that work in a time that I need to spend with my family. So I want to try out working remotely 2 days a week. Again, we've never done that before. Why not find out? So even though we're a global, like a 10 of no, $50 billion company, he had reporting regions. Our reporting region was based in Germany. He went to Germany, we're like, Shocker wants to do this. And they're like, why are you asking us for? No one's ever asked that question before. Why not try it? We did that. And this was way back when I was the first person to take on hybrid working in my workplace.
I
And for
love
2 days
that.
a week, I was at home and it worked. The team were amazing. They just had that empowerment to do what they need to do. When I was in office, I was able to support them. Just different elements of me. But doing all this, navigating all this, was feeling good, was finally feeling a lot more comfortable. I was in my comfort zone for a little while. I went for a run one morning. I just heard God saying, what are you waiting for? I was like, what are you talking about? I was like,
I love that.
this is not what you've been called to do. And you keep on writing down in 6 years, you're going to move and I'm going to like consultancy and start your own company. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. What exactly are you waiting for? When you look at the life that you say you really want to give to your family, this is on you. What are you waiting for? And I argued with God for a minute, but I literally had that sitting with me. Around the same time, I had a conversation with my 8-year-old son, and he was like excited about coming to work where daddy works and everything else. And again, that hit me. I was in an organization that had a couple hundred people. I was only black person there. So there's a lot of stuff skipped in my career, but I'd navigated some crazy foolishness. Like it's bad enough being in the corporate space in London, but there's still diversity there. Being in the corporate space in the Midlands is a whole different ball game. There's ain't no one around you. Like so, not only there's no one on the ground, there's no one at those senior levels that I was in. Those conversations I was in, and it was tiring. It was lonely. It was sometimes toxic. I'm not gonna shrink down to anyone. So I'm challenging stuff. I'm pushing back on stuff. There was so much around it, and when I looked at my son saying that, I'm like, I didn't want that for him. I wanted a completely different environment for him to be able to grow in. What does that actually look like? Well, that looks like working with leaders to help them to think differently. Well, actually, can I do that? Do I know anyone? I was like, wait a minute. But since I was 15, I've been doing this. I've been having conversations with people all the way throughout my career. The reason why I could connect with people, I would sit down and talk to them. The teams I was leading, again, we'll have conversations around family, around businesses they wanted to start outside. I would sit down with them and help them to navigate that and do a lot of stuff on the person. So I saw them, I knew to get the best out of them, that their give back was always, let me go hard at work. And obviously the company won and we had the profits, we had the results. I will be in a meeting with a CEO, we'll be talking about different numbers and something will happen. My wife has done this. Oh, what's going on? And we'll sit down, we'll chat about his career. Like this has been me since way back. All these different skills, which I never really thought were skills. I was just like, oh, people can do this. It all said it's come in front of mind. So with that in mind, I had a conversation with my wife. I was like, I feel like God has said, this is what I need to do. And she was like, what? I'm the main breadwinner in the house. We've got 2 kids. Both our kids are in private school. She's like, what are you going to do? How are you going to make money? Is there a plan on the table? I was like, nope, nope, nope. She's like, okay, let me go away and pray about this and come back to it. I was like, just do you. And she did. She prayed about it. She came back. She was like, okay. Like when we started, we had nothing. We were the level below poor. We were poor. That's what we were. That's what we were navigating. We
Yeah.
literally had nothing for years. And she's like, you know what? We're able to get through that. And I believe in you that if you feel like this is what God has called you in to do, we're gonna be all right. And I
I
always
love
said that my faith and my wife, as long as I got those two things, I'll figure things out.
Mm,
And that's literally where the journey came in. I went to work. I told them I was leaving. They told me I was crazy. They told me I shouldn't do that. A particular director told me I'd be back with my tail between my legs. Like he literally went in on me.
mm,
And then our CFO from the States also flew in. And he's like, oh, I've been watching you for a number of years. You know how organizations are. You're on the list. I've been watching you for a number of years. You're on this list. And here's the offer. Here's the six figures. Here's the title. Here's all the different things that 6 months ago I would have jumped at.
yeah.
And for a minute, I thought about it. I ain't gonna lie. That was more money than I've ever seen in my life. It would have
Mm,
made things so much better, so much easier. And I was like, Lord, is this a reason why you told me to do this? And I was like, no. If I
mm,
do this, this is me settling. If I do this, this is me leaning into my fear rather than my faith. This is me not backing myself. And more importantly for me, it's also me not modeling the right behaviors I want to see in my children, in my
mm,
household, because I need to be that person who's actually leading what that looks like and taking charge. And so I stepped out and started my own company. The first 6 months were tough, trying to get clients, trying to do all that kind
mm,
of stuff. But got first client, did that, and then got us another one. And I kind of went down a consultancy route for a while, which is like a halfway house where I was still
mm,
able to lean on my finance knowledge, project management knowledge, consultancy knowledge, sales knowledge, commercial knowledge. And then because they were turnaround projects, I also had the audacity to be able to change the teams, bring in different infrastructures to move some of the red tape out of the way, stop using certain systems. And first project we did, I think they were losing like 100 million or something. We turned that around. I think they made like 250 in the end.
love that.
Um, Obviously they saw that they're like, this we like that. Like, what's wrong with that? So I ended up working with that company for a number of years, helping them generate over $1 billion on their projects, and it was going really, really well. But then I felt again convicted, like you started to do what you've been called
Mm,
to do, but you haven't gone all in. You're
mm,
still relying on in a sense, yourself in some certain skills that you have. This is not you going all in. You're
mm,
just gone half in. You got one foot in, one foot out. What would it like for you to really walk in faith, not know what's behind that cloud, but trust that have got you. Trust that you have everything in you that you need to really help leaders and organizations grow and change. Trust that actually the way that you look at life and the way that you look at equity, inclusion, psychological safety is very, very different to other people. What would that
mm,
look like for you? And that's where my mindset shift was born. So I started to run that or started to build out that company. And I was running that alongside my other consultancy because I was like, okay, let me start to. I still don't know anyone in L&D and HR space. Let me
mm,
start to speak on stage, and then people can get to know you, and then they find out about your company, and then you build it out, and then I can just scale that one up, scale the other one back. We're good.
mm,
That was the plan I had, and I started to do that. Then the pandemic hit, and everyone's out on virtual
yeah.
platforms. All the OGs, people everyone knows are there. It's
Mm,
crowded, it's noisy. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to stand out here. But in the middle of all of that, God's like, it's still time. It's still time. Even though the plan that you thought you had wasn't going to work out the way that you worked out, it's still time. And I was like, oh,
mm,
God, like, this is pandemic. You know, I can't get out there and speak like that. I can't connect with people like that because they're gonna accept 10,000 LinkedIn requests. They're not gonna care about me.
mm,
And oh, by the way, this consultancy that's furloughed 95% of their staff, and I'm a ridiculously high wage bill on there. They've kept me on.
yeah.
Like this is in itself is a miracle. Like they've kept me on. They're still paying my bills. I'm good. Am I really going to walk away from this into absolutely nothing?
Mm.
And then the response was like, what is faith?
Oh my gosh.
What is trust?
Yeah.
What does walking in obedience actually look like?
Mm.
And I was there's a story in the Bible with Peter when he walks there's wind around him and he comes out the boat and he ends up falling down. And
Yeah.
people was focused on the fact that he fell down. But it's him actually have the audacity to be like, well, there's other 11 other people in the boat. He had the audacity to be like, let me try and walk on water. And he did it.
Mm. Yeah.
Yes, he fell down because he took his eyes off God.
Yeah.
But he actually did something that no one else could say that they could do, that they've
Mm.
ever done apart from Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's what that really, I was like, okay, why not? So I told him, I'm out. I shut down that company, went all in on Mindset Shift. And ever since then, we've just been building, started off locally. Now we're international. We have clients in the US, have clients in Europe, have some clients in Africa. And we're just building out slowly but surely around transforming what exec coaching and leadership development actually looks like. And
I
we're
love
going
it.
at it in a way that is away from the cookie cutter approach, but really looking into what true, deep, lasting transformation looks like. And that
Mm.
is clunky. That is slow. Doesn't always have the short-term impact. It doesn't always have the matrix and the metrics, should I say, to back it up in the
Mm.
short term. But long term, it wins. Long term,
Absolutely.
it works. Long term, it transforms. Long term, you see people showing up. And even though I might be working with one leader, you survey their team at the start and then you talk to their team 6 months in or 3 months in, then 6 months in, then 9 months in. They're like, oh, environment's different. This
Mm.
person's then doing this person's listening to us. And you see that ripple effect go all the way through. You sit down with a bunch of senior leaders and you do group coaching with them for a period of time. And then you talk to their teams, you see movement in their culture.
Mm.
And trying to describe to people at the start what this might look like, how uncomfortable it could be, how experimental what we're doing is, because everyone's different, so there's no one size fits all approach.
Mm.
It's like, I'm not sure we want this. We can go over here and McKinsey do this, or HBR do this, or all these different organizations do this. I'm like, yeah, but they've done this time and time and time again
Yeah.
for the last 30, 40, 50 years. And it's a $60 billion industry, but nothing's really changed.
Mm.
You haven't really been transformed. And by the way the leaders we need in this day and age are different from those days. Different generations are coming up. Different things have happened. The pandemic has happened. Hybrid working is the thing. You got the Gen Z and the Alpha generation coming up. Things around mental health and well-being are front and center. People are talking about burnout. Oh, we're at a time right now where actually CEOs need to have failed at least 2 times for companies to actually think about them. Whereas back in the day, no one wanted to say it or admit that they failed. There's so
Mm.
much things needed, even around AI. It's a whole different mindset shift to be able
Absolutely.
to embed that into your culture, your organization, and think very, very differently. These are fundamental things that the books that you're relying on aren't being written quick enough to be able to rely on to be able to catch up on the amount of change that we're operating in.
Yeah.
These are vertical development challenges, which is this is not about taking more and more stuff in. This is more tapping into what you have and pulling that stuff out to make a difference to that person, to their teams, to the culture, and then to the world. This
Mm.
is what we do, and this is how we operate. And this is where it kind of comes from.
I love it. You mentioned a few things. So I think the first thing that really stood out for me is you went to uni, you did an engineering degree, and then you trained to be an accountant. So for some people, it's like, okay, he's done all of these things and he's ended up here. And for me, that tells a story of, you know, not feeling like there's only one route for you, or not feeling like because you've done this qualification, this is what you must do for a living.
Mhm.
What would you say to anyone that has like trained in one profession, for example, and is thinking, well, I'm stuck here now, this is what I need to do. I can't do what, I can't walk in my purpose, for example, which could be a calling in a completely different direction.
So I've been asked that question a number of times, and my answer is always very flippant. You're not stuck. You're not a tree.
I love that.
It's literally, and I said that every single time. It's like you can move. The only thing that's stopping you from actually moving is you,
Mm.
and it's how you choose to look at yourself and what you're capable of doing. Like you said, like I have a finance chartered accountancy economics degree. When I moved into this space, and yes, I'm a qualified coach and everything else. Even when I was doing my coaching qualification, there were so many things on there. I'm like, oh, this is what I already do. This is who I am. This is how I show up.
Mm,
Because for me, that was me actually. The reason why I landed here, and in fact, just recently I met a friend of mine who I haven't seen in 25 years. And she's like, what do you do now? I was like, oh, I run exec coaching company, leadership development company. She started laughing. She's like, I'm not surprised. Like, when you're operating in your zone of genius, there's so many things that you already do that come naturally to you that other people can see that you don't see you can utilize in another form. And I
mm,
also say we are at a time right now where actually back in the day, it was all about having linear careers
mm.
and you stay there for 20, 30, 40 years. In these day and age, the average person stays, I think is now 18 months.
Yeah.
It's gone down and down and down and down. Is 18 months. Everyone has portfolio careers.
Mm,
So you can move. You have transferable skills. I know people with art degrees and history degrees, and they're doing stuff in tech and AI. Two different worlds.
yeah.
History and AI. Bring those two worlds together. Tell me how. But that's how. Doesn't matter what you started doing. It matters what do you want to do. And then you
Mm,
now try to find the resources, you find the right people to help you to move in that particular way. And I said the right people because there are people you talk to and they'll be like, no, don't do that.
yeah.
Some of them say that out of their own fear that they put on you, and some of those people might be your family. Know that and don't chat to them. Some people are just friends and they're haters.
Yeah.
Again, know that, don't chat to them. But there are other people who will push you, they'll ask you questions, but it's coming from a place of love. They're the
Mm,
people that you want to get around you. Your board of advisors, they're the ones that are key to help you to actually move from where you are now to where you want to be. I have some of the clients I work with, one of the things that we focus a lot of times is about identity. And
mm,
they will have been in organizations for 25 years, thriving, amazing organizations, massive labels behind them. And they were like, yeah, but I'm not fulfilled anymore. How do
mm,
I move? How do I separate my identity? And then they'll go from doing one thing for 25 years in one particular field to two of my clients who have gone on to create two seven-figure businesses. They
mm.
have never been entrepreneurs. They're 45 and 49. Never ever even thought about it until we started working together. Two successful seven-figure businesses.
Amazing.
A couple other ones have completely pivoted into different industries, thriving, happy, fulfilled. So there are examples of everyone that you can look to be like, this person did this person tried
Mm.
that. It's that first step that you take, and then that next step that you take, then that next step that you take, and then you're good to go.
Absolutely. I feel like, when you were telling your story, I feel like I'm definitely a few years behind you. Like I identify with so much with that piece around, hearing God say, now is your time to move. I think for me, the only thing is that when people hear my story, it is, some people are like, did it really need to take cancer for you to be like, God saying move? Right? But for me,
So
like I fully know that my story happened, or the things that have happened in my story have happened to get me to where I am today. Like God needed me to be really uncomfortable. And I say this to a lot of my friends as well. When they're going through stuff, I'm like, I need you to start to get excited because God is making you uncomfortable because he needs you to move. Like you've been stuck for too long. Get excited about what's about to come. And I think a lot like you as well, when I got that punch or that knock to move, I was like, yeah, I'm going to set up my consultancy. I'm going to move halfway in and I'm going to consult for a few years. And that's exactly what I did. So I took the skills that I had, my organizational development skills, my coaching, all of that. And I went in and I consulted as an organizational development consultant for 2 years. And then again, I heard God saying, what are you doing, babes? Like the plan was to do this, and you're halfway there, but you're coaching, you're chilling, you're enjoying the money too much. This isn't where you're meant to be. I've called you to do this. And then, I had to take that leap as well. I just had to just trust God. And I am in that stage of trusting him. It's like, I set up Acquaintance Consulting officially in 2022, as in registered it with Companies House. but didn't move full time into it until August of last year. And it literally is a walk in faith in knowing that, you know, the purpose that I have with this consultancy is so, so important that it's worth doing full time. And that's where I am. So I completely agree and identify with your journey and with that conviction that you have. And I think it's so encouraging for people is that there will be periods of discomfort when you're moving into your purpose, but trust the process and trust God that actually it's all going to be worth it and you will land where you need to land. Another thing that you said that really resonated with me was about when your son said to you, you know, I want to do what you do for a living, Dad. And you were like, oh, I don't want you to do this. This isn't what I'm meant to be doing. And that propelled you. I think there is something about having little people watching you that also propels you. Like one of the things that I say a lot as well about the work that I do is that I'm trying to create a world in which when my daughter gets to the point where she's entering the working world, I would be happy to leave her there. Like, so if I'm not there, I know that she is entering a better professional world than the one that I entered, and that she can reach for the stars, surpassing the sky without any barriers in her way. Like, that's my ultimate goal. And I know that some of our listeners don't have kids, but there is something greater than yourself that you're working for. And that's usually when you know you're walking in your purpose, is when it feels bigger than you. It's not just about you.
Have you
Yeah,
found that? Oh my gosh,
absolutely.
I have a child or I have dependents. Can't take that risk because if I do and it
Absolutely.
doesn't work out, then I can't provide for them. So that can also hold some people
Definitely.
back rather than spurring them on.
Definitely. And I've definitely been there. You know, I've got a mortgage. I've got a 12-year-old who goes to school in London and every day wants £5 to go to the shops, you know, even though she gets a hefty amount for lunch. Like, what are you buying at the shops? I've got a child who I'm trying to provide for in a way that is better than the way I was provided for. My parents did an amazing job. I saw my parents struggle to give us what we needed. We never got what we wanted because they didn't have it. And I grew up wanting to give my daughter more than I had because I know what that developed in me. And I want to, you know, we're always trying to do better. We're trying to create little people that are better than us and live better than we did. So I know that, you know, when we have kids, sometimes that can be the reason we stay in these comfortable corporate roles. Um, and yeah, and I'm testimony to, like, take the leap. Worst case scenario, you might have to take a step back, but don't let yourself take that step back for too long. But believe in yourself, believe in your purpose, and walk in it. And yeah, by God's grace, it will land, man. It will land.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you also talked about, or one of the things that I'm aware of, is, I don't know if it was from one of your posts or one of your beautiful videos that you do after your run or during your run, but you were talking about basically, you know, in the work that you do, you're all about creating leaders who, if they weren't leaders, they would want to report into. But I know I've not said that properly. But talk me through that. Like, you know, what is that driver for you? Like, what does success look like for you?
What success looks like, I see us as human beings like this. When we are born, we all have different gifts and talents
Mm,
that is put inside of us. And then we go through school, which dulls a lot of that.
yeah.
We go into society, which dulls a lot of that. And then a lot of us end up as shells,
Mm,
existing rather than thriving.
oh my
And
gosh, I
what we
say
do
that
is actually around, let's get you back to thriving mode.
a lot.
Let's move and shift all of that. So when you talk about leaders that people want to be around, which is one of the phrases that we use, or I literally just changed it recently when I said it's a 3.0 version of who you should be. And
Mm,
why 3.0 is 1.0 is your current capabilities. 2.0 is then your past improvements. And 3.0 is that next level, is that next layer. that you go to, just very much like, go back to the iPhone analogy, you normally get constant iOS updates. If you're on Apple, if you're on Samsung, I don't know what you get, but Apple, you
Who are
normally get
they?
you normally get system up and a bug's been found. Is what success looks like. Because
Mm,
actually, if I can work with you, Grace, straight away I know that you're going to impact your daughter, who's going to impact her circle. You're
mm,
going to impact your clients, you're going to impact their wider networks. And for me, it's that multiplier ripple effect
mm,
that's the key. So success looks like actually having an organization that doesn't need to exist. That's what success looks like, where
mm,
we don't have to be working with people on coaching them and leadership development, where people are actually taking the time to intentionally slow down, to check
mm,
themselves, to sit in the mud, to read their biases, to understand their triggers, to communicate in ways that resonate with other people, people who are recognizing that that people are humans and not numbers, not binary. That for
mm,
me is what success looks like. That for me is creating an environment where my son or my daughter can go into and they don't have to worry about the different intersectionalities of being either a man or woman, of being a black man or a black woman, of being a black man or black woman who is both Nigerian and Jamaican. There's so many different layers
yeah.
that captures and explores. It's all those different things.
Mm,
That's for me what success looks like, because part of when I look at the work that we do, now intentionally leaning on the like equity and inclusion, psychological safety piece. Part of the reason why I felt it hasn't worked, um, specifically around just going straight into what DA has kind of been corped into now, is because you've had a lot of organizations, cultures, and leaders who haven't actually done the work.
mm,
They've done the surface work,
yeah.
they haven't done the real work. And
Mm,
without ever doing the real work, nothing's ever going to stick. Hence why you get a backlash in 2024.
yeah,
But
exactly.
let's do the real work. Sit around someone who will challenge you, who will call you out,
Mm,
or as it has been described by one of my clients, give you a gentle slap. You know, that stuff sometimes what you need to kind of wake you up. But
um,
they have the right to speak into you, to really help you to see things from a different lens, a different perspective, to challenge that. But all of that's in you. And
mm,
that's, if you can do that, that ripple effect, that multiplier effect, it change and transform society. Because that's ultimately what we're trying to do. Is always that individual to the team, to the organization, to society.
mm,
Those four layers, that for me is what legacy actually looks like.
definitely. So I feel like there are two kind of main themes that have come out of this conversation. So one of them is obviously around, what do you want your legacy to be? And then the other one is move, like walk in your purpose, like what we doing. So I like to end these sessions with a call to action. And I think it would be great to hear kind of what your call to action would be for anyone who is at this kind of junction between walking in their purpose and doing what they've always done. Um, whether that be a leader who feels that they could be a more purposeful leader or more purpose led leader, or someone who is currently working in the corporate world and thinking, if this isn't where I'm meant to be, I'm not walking in my purpose. What would your call to action be to any of those people?
You only get one life to live, and you either give your pen to someone else to write your story, or you get to write your own.
Mm,
Write your own. It's a better story. It's a hero story, as opposed to other people creating a villain story about who you
mm,
are and what you're about. So that will be my call to action. Grab that pen, write your story. And as you're doing that, recognize that it's not going to be easy. My journey is not going to be your journey. Grace's journey is not going to be your journey. But you can take elements and take encouragement from the different things that we've talked about and shared today, and be like, it doesn't have my journey doesn't have to look like yours.
mm,
However, it is possible, and that's what you're heading towards. So
yeah.
if you know that it is possible to actually do something different, it is possible to actually change and transform, regardless of how difficult it feels right now, just go for it. and see what happens. You can always go back.
Exactly.
You actually have those skills, you have those certificates, you have those degrees, you have those connections. You can always go back if you ever wanted to. But this is not about going backwards. It's about you moving forward rather than staying stuck. Because again, you are not a tree.
Absolutely love it. Sope, thank you so much. I have loved this episode, so I know that a lot of our listeners are going to love it. And I, again, have learned so much from you in terms of how I run my podcast and the conversations, because this was a vibe. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This podcast is brought to you by Acquaintance Consulting. We'd love it if you could take a minute at the end of this podcast to follow, subscribe, whichever is easier or available for you on the platform that you're listening to us on. We're really keen to grow this channel and really impact equality, diversity, and inclusion across the world. And with your support, we can do just that.